Allow me to share with you a small part of the summer of 2013 that I dedicated to creating a space for myself on the Bushwhack, Alaska organization lands near the gates of the Arctic National Park. Nestled in the Koyukuk River Valley, this particular location has attributes that make it a highly desirable place to visit. The Alaska Pipeline, extending from Valdez to Prudhoe Bay, passes through the Koyukuk River Valley. The Dalton Highway, the Hall Road, massive truck traffic, surrounded by wild, open, and protected lands. There's a corridor through the Dalton Highway area that is not open to motorized vehicle or rifle hunting. Moose, fox, in this case, Dall sheep on the near ridges provide an inspiring, close connection to the natural world. The Bushwhack Alaska camp itself, the area where I had the privilege of building a small house for the use of the camp patrons and myself from time to time, started out in 2010 with a 16 by 16 base camp with a good group of folks. I, in the summer of 2011, helped to make the sauna, the cabin 3, cabin 2, cabin 1. There should be better names for these dwellings, these structures, guest cabins. The final cabin, several logs higher than the others, used all we had, has actually a loft and more space for patrons. It was here that I started constructing my own little space. Driving the very first stake to lay out the foundation was certainly a milestone in the project. I had been there about a month before this happened, helping out with the guiding and outfitting process that Eric Salatan, the owner of Bushwhack Alaska Camp, maintains. I was very fortunate to have Jackie Guys join me for a period of time to help construct the cabins. She's worked for me before in various projects in the Canandaigua area. A stalwart worker, very skilled, very dependable, and managed to push this project along smartly. Clearing the actual site of the white spruce trees and brush is certainly labor intensive. Good technique. The materials for the structure, we opted to use rough-cut green spruce that, as the price is right, but the various difficulties working with green wood turned out to be significant. A huge load of lumber from Fairbanks up the 270 miles. Major problem in construction here, the permafrost. In some areas, the boggy organic soil in others required the construction of roadways by hauling gravel and dumping it to serve as a base for vehicular and foot traffic, for that matter, too. The previous year, we had carried 80 tons of gravel in 5-gallon pails using a little four-wheeler as a mode of power. The Kubota made things a lot easier. The building site for my tiny home starts out with a fairly well cleared area. gravel piles to serve as the basis for the foundation blocks, which in this case we decided to use pressure-treated railroad ties. Moving logs about requires leverage, levers, fulcrums. I love that peavey. This item revolutionized hand logging back in the early 1800s. You can move anything with a proper lever. Preparing the main beams, white spruce logs, either flattened on one side or notched to serve as the foundation basis for the subsequent structure. Squared and leveled, we proceeded to deck this over to provide the first floor, the insulated level for the structure itself. The very first nail, a ritual indeed, 16 penny bright nails on green spruce do not hold very well, and if there's any warpage in the wood, it makes it difficult to bring things smartly together. During the dark and cold time of the year, insulation and sealing are absolutely essential if a dwelling is to be used for human habitation with any degree of comfort. The 2x6 floor joists and plywood sheeting beneath to hold the 6.5-inch insulation bats will provide a fairly high probability of decent warmth within the cabin, which of course will require a great deal of fuel wood during the course of a winter stay. Vapor barrier, again essential, prevent air infiltration, trap the air, dead space, better insulating value. Moving the deck about, squaring it, centering it on the foundation requires some ingenuity and leverage again too.
You needed a block for the
we can get.
Pretty soon the building became too heavy to attempt to move it in this manner. The tongue and groove particle board decking serves well enough. The 2-foot centers, perhaps a little bit wide. The floor would not take a rambunctious dancing effort.
Okay, start cranking.
The green spruce header board brought into place with a ratchet straps allows us to nail it so that it stays basically in place.
You got good tension on there?
The first wall prefabricated on the deck comes together as a 12 foot high, 20 foot long, actually it's closer to 16 feet high. Put the sheeting on while it was down there, which turned out to be an error. This thing became an excessive challenge to lift into place with the equipment that we had. You will note from time to time they're not airplanes or helicopters, rather Alaskan mosquitoes interfering with the sanctity of photographic efforts.
So you want to put like 2x6?
They're rather dense at this time of year, but you choose to tolerate them, you can handle the mosquitoes. The Kubota, with a certain range of motion on the bucket, started the wall up, but it was a rather heavy unit, a little bit more than people could lift. The height aggravated that option. We got it as high as we could with the Kubota, but were unable to get it up immediately without arranging for some additional options. We used props, which we actually used a peavey to get them up. We now have a rope attached to the top of this on the Kubota bucket off in the distance, which is pulling this thing into vertical. The base is held in place by logs behind it to prevent it from skidding off. Near vertical position, restrained from coming over with a chain from the other direction. We proceed to assemble the second stud wall. That's light enough, and without full sighting, we managed to get that one up by hand. Bringing the two wall sections together, slack off the rope, which should help to pull up the first section. Get these things relatively vertical and fasten them together. This is where they will dedicate the rest of their existence. Walls, that is. 2 picture windows up there, which will serve as my writing desk. The rear wall assembled without siding on it. We ease it up into place, attempt to ease it up into place. Bad things do happen. Green spruce, short nails, lack of holding power.
Hold it off the deck.
No sheeting to tie it together. Back to square one. Disassemble, back the nails out, put it together.
You mind if I take the beater into town and relax?
With the 4 walls in place, most of the sheeting tacked on pretty well. Put the roof rafters up, roof decking, and then the rather efficient and certainly very effective roofing material goes into place.
Understand it's possible to slice a finger off handling this stuff.
Yeah.
You ready up there, Tim, for me to hand them up to you?
Good to go.
This stuff is a little scary to handle. It is really dangerous. Got to have gloves and be wary of it slipping and slicing fingers or worse. This little workhorse served in an amazingly effective, unbelievable power to pull logs out of the forest for whatever purpose needed. I take great delight in operating a chainsaw. I really don't understand how it's possible for someone to enjoy it as much as I do. Eric Salatan, the owner, did agree to beef up the chainsaw collection with a 7.5 horsepower steel MS660, which facilitated the process dramatically. The string straight enough, an eyeball following the string, again with practice and attention. And I would submit that one of the prerequisites for successful use of chainsaw for construction is to be left-handed, which I am. This allows you to line the cuts up quite nicely. Detail work with a chainsaw is possible, again with care and quite a bit of experience. Here we're creating dado grooves to serve as the recipients for the tenons for the treads on a stairway. But measured carefully, widthwise, and pay attention to the lines, it's possible to produce fairly tight-fitting structures. The treads themselves, again, half logs, cut to length. These with a little jig to hold them appropriately. And carefully scribed lines. Form the tenons, which will go into the dados cut by the chainsaw and the stringers themselves. Where logs will be visible, and particularly in the interior of buildings, taking the time to peel the bark off is desirable. It's a pain in the neck, a dirty, messy job. Fortunately, these logs were green not long ago, and at the point of diameter growth, which allows the bark to loosen up and slip as the tree expands. The finished stairwell, a small building would not provide space for a standard stairway, more of a ladder. But I was absolutely delighted that each of the treads fit smartly in the dado grooves. My strong interest in working with hand tools, particularly axes and timbers, caused me to attempt to build a number of hewn beam components, perhaps a little bit of an advantage to start by ripping the side off the log to get it to rough dimension, and then scoring it with a scoring axe in preparation for hewing to provide the appearance of hewn logs. It is possible to do this without starting the sides of each of the timbers. A lot more efficient and a little bit more accurate in my case for my purposes with the chainsaw. That English mast axe is an actual antique. It was designed back in the days when the British came to get huge white pine logs from the United States for the tall mast for their fleet. Cutting tools, woodworking tools do mandate sharp, something that I'm very fond of creating. I was delighted at how easily the properly sharpened axe slices through the knots of the white spruce. This particular timber will be used to support the floor joist, the second-story joists. I found it quite a challenge. At this point, Jackie had departed, and I was holding both ends of the board myself. The first attempt to put this thing up resulted in the whole beam crashing down and took the vapor barrier with it. Start over again. Managed to get it into place without a second mishap. This jammed into place and then lagged to the studs, provides adequate support for the floor joists. Again, for aesthetic purposes and appearance and just for the fun of it, I chose to assemble a timber frame bent, a section of beams assembled to support the shed roof. The mortise and tenon component created with a chainsaw. This particular operation is tricky. It does require practice to master. The probability of that saw kicking is real. You have to be out of the way. But bring it to dimension, plane it, smooth it off, again by eye, holding the saw as vertically as possible. Little template, that's the size of the tenons. That fits well enough. Vertical beams with tenons which will fit into those mortise openings. A 1-inch, once these are assembled, a 1-inch bit will go through the beam, through the tenon, out the other side of the beam, and be fastened with 1-inch dowels. I must say that I was gratified to have this unit come together, fit plumb square true on the first try. The knee braces mortised into the vertical and horizontal beam on top with the joints drilled and pegged, create a surprisingly stable and strong unit. I got up on top of that thing to put the roofing on, and it did not shake at all. Working on a set of stairs that indispensable peavey for moving logs. There's a string along this log aiding in the accuracy, the straightness of the cut. I was delighted to have two good friends from the Coldfoot Emporium come and help for a day. We managed to assemble stairs, peel bark, and thoroughly enjoy a little bit of music session afterwards. The finished shed roof will serve as a phenomenal place for hanging moose and caribou quarters, almost out of reach of the grizzly bears. The primary purpose of the shed will be to lay in a supply of firewood, essential for the interior winters with -30, -40, -50 degrees of frost. Stairway, beams, very pleasing. I must say that to work along on a project and see it take shape and step back and admire the consequence of dedication, time, and effort is an absolutely wonderful feeling. One of my all-time favorite activities is to make and do, create things, and then take the time to reflect and appreciate. This, my little retirement getaway, I will come back to savor this. It's not finished. I will go back in the summer of 2014 for at least a month with probably a few helpers as well. But soak in the scenery and savor the wild. I love Alaska. I want to go back, and I will.